My ex-husband tried to have me arrested right before my daughter walked down the aisle. Not outside the venue, not quietly in the parking lot. He waited until I was standing in the front row, holding the small pearl hairpin my daughter had asked me to keep safe, with the string quartet playing softly and every guest turned toward the chapel doors. Then he stood up, pointed at me, and said, "Officers, that's her. Arrest my ex-wife before she ruins another family milestone." 2 uniformed officers walked toward me. My daughter Avery froze in her wedding dress at the end of the aisle. My ex smiled. The same smile he used 20 years earlier when he convinced a judge I was emotionally unstable, because I cried after finding out he had emptied our savings account. I did not run, I did not scream. I looked down at the pearl hairpin in my hand, then at the sealed cream envelope inside my purse, the one my daughter had given me that morning, and told me not to open unless something went wrong. Something had gone wrong. But what my ex did not know was that the man standing quietly beside the chapel doors, the man he assumed was just my second husband in a Navy suit, was not just a wedding guest. He was Chief Daniel Mercer. And 9 minutes later, the handcuffs meant for me were locked around my ex-husband's wrists instead. My name is Claire Bennett, and for most of my adult life, I was known in one family story as the woman who ruined everything. That story had a narrator. My ex-husband, Richard Bennett. Richard did not yell much. That was part of the danger. Men like him learn early that a calm voice can do more damage than shouting if the room already wants to believe them. He had a school principal face, a careful haircut, and the talent of making cruelty sound like concern. When we met, I was 23 and working at a community library. He was 30, already selling commercial insurance, already wearing suits to Saturday lunch, already talking about the kind of life we would build before he had asked whether I wanted the same one. I mistook certainty for safety. That is an easy mistake when you grow up with chaos. My mother raised me alone and loved me fiercely but unevenly. Bills were late. Jobs came and went. We moved apartments when landlords got impatient. So when Richard arrived with clean plans and a steady calendar, I thought peace had finally learned my name. He proposed after 8 months. My mother cried because she thought I was getting stability. I cried because I thought so too. For a while, we looked like the kind of couple people trusted. A small house with yellow shutters, Sunday dinners, matching Christmas stockings. A daughter born 2 years later with dark hair, serious eyes, and fingers that curled around mine like she had chosen me personally. We named her Avery. She was my whole sky. Richard loved being seen as a father. That is different from loving fatherhood. He liked photographs at the pumpkin patch, preschool programs, birthday parties where other parents praised how involved he was. He did not like fevers at 2 a.m., spilled juice in the car, bedtime fear, or the ordinary patience children require when nobody is watching. I did those things. He performed the rest. When Avery was 6, I found the first missing money, $3,000 from our joint savings account, labeled in the bank statement as business development expense. Richard said it was for a client dinner package. "Why didn't you tell me?" He kissed my forehead. "Because you worry. I was protecting you." At 29, I was still young enough to think protection and secrecy sometimes shared a wall. Then came more withdrawals, credit card debt, a second phone, a woman named Elise from his office who called at strange hours and hung up when I answered. When I confronted him, Richard did not deny it. He sighed, like I had disappointed him by discovering the obvious. "You've been unhappy for years," he said. "Don't make me the villain because I found kindness somewhere else." I remember standing in our kitchen with Avery's kindergarten artwork on the refrigerator behind him, thinking, he has already rehearsed this. That became his gift, rehearsal. By the time I filed for divorce, Richard had turned himself into the wounded husband and me into the unstable wife. He told our friends I was paranoid. He told his family I was bitter. He told our pastor I had episodes. He used my tears as evidence and his calmness as proof. Then he did the one thing I never forgave. He made Avery believe, slowly and carefully, that loving me would cost her his approval. He never said, "Don't love your mother." He was too smart for that, he said. "Your mom is having a hard time." Then, "Your mom gets confused." Then, "Don't tell your mom yet. She'll react badly." Then, "Maybe it's easier if you stay here this weekend. She needs space." A child does not understand manipulation. A child understands which parent makes love feel simple and which one makes love feel risky. I became the risky one. The custody fight was ugly in a quiet way. Richard had better lawyers. Better records because he had created them. Better witnesses because people liked the version of him that carried casseroles to church events. I had truth. Truth helped less than I thought it would. During one hearing, Richard's attorney asked me why I had sent 17 text messages in one evening after he failed to bring Avery home on time. I said because my daughter was missing. He said, or because you struggle to regulate fear? The judge looked tired. Richard looked sad. I looked unstable. That was how it worked. I did not lose Avery completely, but I lost enough. Every other weekend, one weekday dinner, shared holidays on paper that Richard found ways to complicate. He became the house with the pool, the new clothes, the vacations, the less strict bedtime. I became homework, questions, and a face that tried not to cry when my daughter asked if she could go back to Dad's early. The proof object from that time was a green notebook. Avery was 8 when she started it. She called it our between book. We used it to write messages when saying them out loud felt too hard. She would leave it in her backpack when she came to my house. I would write back before she returned. At first, the notes were simple. Mom, I miss pancake sundaes. I miss them too. We can make blueberry ones next time. Then they changed. Dad says you don't like his new wife because you're jealous. That is not true. I am sad about many things, but I love you more than I dislike anyone. Dad says you cry, so I feel bad. I cry because I miss you. Your feelings are not responsible for my tears. Then, one weekend, the notebook disappeared. Richard said Avery lost it. Avery said Dad told her it was unhealthy. I thought it was gone forever. Years later, it came back, but I am getting ahead of myself. Avery grew up between 2 versions of her life. At Richard's house, she had structure that looked beautiful from outside and rules that changed depending on his mood. His second wife, Elise, lasted 4 years before leaving with a quiet settlement and no public explanation. His third serious girlfriend, Monique, tried too hard to be Avery's friend and eventually disappeared after an argument over money. Richard always survived cleanly. People around him left looking difficult. I rebuilt slowly. I went from the library to a county records office, then became a legal document specialist. That job changed me. I learned how paper holds power: deeds, court filings, police reports, protective orders, affidavits, timestamps, certified mail receipts. People lie with confidence, but documents keep dates. I also met Daniel Mercer there. He was not chief then. He was a detective assigned to a fraud investigation involving forged property transfers. He came to the records office looking exhausted, polite, and unimpressed by nonsense. The first thing he said to me was, "I'm hoping you can help me find a document everyone says does not exist." I said, "That is my favorite kind." He smiled, not Richard's polished smile, a tired, real one. We found the document, then another. Then enough to solve his case. Months later, he came back with coffee and said, "This is not a bribe. This is gratitude with caffeine." I told him I did not date law enforcement. He said, "That's wise." Then he kept showing up at the records office for legitimate reasons. Never pushing, never charming too hard, never making me feel cornered by kindness. Daniel was steady without being controlling. That distinction took me years to trust. When we finally had dinner, I told him about Richard before dessert. Not details, just enough. "I have an ex who is very good at being believed," I said. Daniel listened. He did not interrupt to say he was different. He did not promise to protect me from everything. He did not call Richard names to win points. He said, "Then we go slow, and you stay in charge of your own story." I almost cried into my tea. We married when I was 47. Avery was 21 then. Distant but polite. She attended the ceremony in a blue dress and cried when Daniel promised not to become the loudest voice in my life. Later, she hugged me carefully and whispered, "I'm glad you're happy, Mom." It was the first time in years she called me Mom without sounding guarded. I went home that night and cried in Daniel's arms because healing can hurt when it touches places you thought had gone numb. Daniel became police chief 3 years after we married. He was respected but not flashy. He believed in policies, body cameras, clean paperwork, and officers who could admit when they were wrong. Richard hated him immediately, not openly. Richard sent Christmas cards addressed to Claire and her officer. At Avery's college graduation, he shook Daniel's hand and said, "Must be interesting, marrying into unresolved history." Daniel replied, "I find history becomes less unresolved when everyone stops editing it." I loved him for that. Richard did not. Avery's engagement brought old fractures back to the surface. Her fiancé, Jonah, was kind, patient, and deeply in love with her. He worked as a civil engineer and had the gentle confidence of a man raised by parents who apologized when they were wrong. I liked him immediately. Avery called me herself to tell me the news. Not a group text, not through Richard, a call. "Mom," she said, voice shaking, "Jonah proposed." I sat down on the kitchen stool. "Oh, sweetheart." I said yes. I cried. She cried. For 3 minutes, there was no Richard, no past, no courtroom, no careful distance. Just my daughter and me. Then she said, "I want you involved." Those 5 words gave me back air. Wedding planning became delicate. Richard paid for much of the venue and made sure everyone knew. I offered to contribute quietly, and Avery accepted help with flowers, alterations, and the dessert table. Daniel and I gave her no-pressure money for whatever makes the day easier. Richard insisted on hosting the rehearsal dinner. He insisted on giving the main toast. He insisted the father-daughter dance remain traditional, though Avery nervously asked whether she could also dance with me later. Of course, I said. I did not tell her how much that meant. The first warning came 3 months before the wedding. Avery called late one night. "Mom, did you take Grandma's sapphire comb?" I sat up in bed. "What?" "Dad says you borrowed it years ago and never returned it." I had not heard of the comb in 20 years. Richard's mother, Helena, had owned a sapphire hair comb she wore in family portraits. It was one of those heirlooms that Richard's family treated like proof they were better than people who bought jewelry at malls. "No," I said. "I never had it." Avery was quiet. "Dad says you were angry during the divorce and some things went missing." My throat tightened. "Avery, I did not take anything from that house except my clothes, my books, and your baby photos after I had to ask 3 times. "I know. You can ask me anything. I want to wear it at the wedding." Dad said he found a similar one, but the original is gone. There it was. A tiny seed, not an accusation yet, a possibility. Richard was planting something. I wrote the date down after we hung up. Daniel noticed. "What happened?" I told him. His face changed slightly. "Do you want advice or just a witness?" That was one of our rules. Witness first. So he sat quietly while I wrote every detail in a blue folder labeled Avery Wedding. After years in records, I trusted folders more than memory. The second warning came 6 weeks before the wedding. The venue coordinator emailed Avery, Richard, Jonah, Daniel, and me about final family entrance order. My name had been moved from mother of the bride, front row, to guest seating, row 3. I called Avery. She was horrified. I didn't do that. "I know." Dad said maybe it would be less awkward because of Daniel. "Did Daniel do something?" "No," Dad said police presence might make guests uncomfortable. I looked across the kitchen at Daniel, who was making toast in his undershirt like the least intimidating man alive. "Avery," I said carefully, "your wedding should feel peaceful. But if you want me in row 3, I will sit there. If you want me in front, I will sit there." Her voice cracked. "I want you in front, then I'll be in front." That evening, Daniel checked with the venue about security arrangements, not as chief, just as my husband trying to understand. The venue had its own private security. Richard had added 2 off-duty officers through a neighboring jurisdiction for crowd support. Daniel's eyebrows lowered when he read the names. "Do you know them?" I asked. "1. Officer Lang. He used to work under me before transferring. Good officer, but too trusting with paperwork. The other I don't know. Is it strange? For a wedding of 80 people? Yes." I added it to the folder. The third warning came from Avery herself. 2 weeks before the wedding, she came to my house alone. That alone mattered. For years, Richard had trained her to keep emotional meetings triangulated, always with him informed, involved, or waiting for a report. But that evening, she stood on my porch in jeans and a sweater, holding a cream envelope. "Can we talk?" I pulled her inside and made tea neither of us drank. She looked around my kitchen like she was checking whether childhood could be found in corners. Then she said, "Mom, do you still have the Between book?" My heart stopped for a second. "The green notebook?" Her eyes filled. "Dad said you threw it away." "No, he told me you lost it." She reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. A green notebook, worn corners, faded sticker on the front. A small ink stain near the spiral. I touched it like it was alive. "Where did you find it?" "In Dad's storage closet." I was looking for old photos for the wedding slideshow. It was in a box labeled tax records. Of course it was. Hidden among things nobody opens unless something is wrong. "I read some of it," she whispered. I could barely breathe. "And," she cried then, not delicately, not like a bride worried about makeup, like a child whose map had been turned around and who finally saw where home had been all along. "You kept telling me you loved me," she said. "Even when I was mean, even when I repeated things Dad said. You never said bad things about him." I closed my eyes. "I tried not to put the weight on you. He said you used me against him." "No, I know." Those two words changed 20 years, not fixed. Changed. She pushed the cream envelope toward me. I copied some pages. Not all. Just enough. I also found emails Dad wrote to his lawyer about making you look reactive. He called it building the mother narrative. I felt sick. Avery looked ashamed. "I should have seen it earlier. You were a child. I'm not now." I reached for her hand. "No, you're not," she told me more. Richard had been agitated lately, angry about the seating. Angry that she wanted me in the bridal suite. Angry that Jonah's family liked Daniel. Angry that she planned a mother-daughter dance after the father-daughter dance. "He keeps saying you'll make the wedding about your pain," she said. "Are you worried I will?" She looked at me for a long time. "No, I'm worried he will." Then she told me something strange. "Dad asked if your purse would be with you during the ceremony." My skin prickled. "My purse," he said. He wanted to make sure the pearl hairpin was safe. The pearl hairpin was not his, it was mine. My mother had worn it on her wedding day before her marriage fell apart, then given it to me the year Avery was born. It was not expensive, but Avery had always loved it. She asked to wear it for the reception after removing her veil. I had agreed to keep it safe during the ceremony. Avery took a breath. "If something happens at the wedding, open the envelope." "What do you mean something?" "I don't know. But Dad has been too calm since I told him you'd still sit front row." She left the envelope with me. I wanted to open it immediately. She shook her head. "Please, not unless something goes wrong. I need to handle some of this myself first." That was hard. But she was right. She was not 8 anymore. She was not a messenger between houses. She was a woman choosing truth, and I had to respect that. After she left, Daniel and I sat at the kitchen table with the blue folder between us. He said, "Claire, this may be more than wedding drama." "I know." "Do you want me to intervene officially?" "No, not yet. I don't want Richard claiming police intimidation from my husband." Daniel nodded. That was why I trusted him. He had power, but he did not need to use it to feel powerful. The wedding was held at Willowmere Hall, an old chapel and garden estate outside the city. Stone arches, ivy walls, stained glass windows, and a reception barn renovated so beautifully Elaine from my old life would have called it rustic chic. Avery chose ivory flowers, pale blue ribbons, and handwritten place cards. She looked radiant. I arrived early with Daniel. He wore a navy suit, not uniform. I wore a slate blue dress Avery helped me choose. In my purse were the pearl hairpin, the cream envelope, and a certified copy of an old custody order I carried out of habit and trauma. Daniel noticed. "You don't need to carry court orders today," he said gently. "I know, but I did some papers become armor even after the war ends." The morning went almost beautifully. Avery let me zip her dress. That moment alone was worth every hard year. She stood facing the mirror, eyes full, while I fastened tiny buttons down her back. "I used to think you didn't fight harder for me," she whispered. My fingers paused. "I fought as hard as I knew how without breaking you in half." She nodded, crying quietly. "I know that now. I wanted to say so much. I wanted to pour 20 years into that room. But wedding mornings are fragile. They are not courtrooms, so I said, today, you only have to be happy." She turned and hugged me. "I want the mother-daughter dance right after Dad's dance. Are you sure?" "Yes." Then she took the pearl hairpin from the vanity and placed it in my palm. "Keep this until the reception." "I will." Her hand closed around mine. "And Mom?" "Yes. If Dad does something, don't disappear to protect me." That sentence found the deepest place in me. For years, I had minimized pain to spare her. Now she was asking me not to. "I won't," I said. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock. At 3:42, I saw Richard near the chapel entrance speaking with the 2 officers Daniel had mentioned. He wore a black tuxedo and the confident grief of a man preparing to be wronged publicly. He glanced at me once, then away. Daniel followed my gaze. "Stay near me," he said softly. "You're scaring me. I'm paying attention." At 3:51, a bridesmaid rushed over. "Mrs. Mercer?" "Avery needs 1 minute. She says don't panic." "Don't panic" is a phrase that always invites panic. I stood, but the planner said Avery only wanted the maid of honor. So I sat back down, hand around my purse strap. Richard watched. He seemed pleased. At 3:58, the music began. Guests rose. The chapel doors opened. Avery appeared with Richard at her side. My daughter in white, for one breath, everything bad in my life became background. She looked at me. Not at Richard, at me. I smiled through tears. Then, halfway down the aisle, Richard leaned close and whispered something to her. Avery's face tightened. They reached the front. Jonah took her hand. Richard did not let go immediately. Avery pulled gently. He released her. The officiant began. "Dearly beloved." Then Richard stepped backward, away from the front row, and lifted his hand. "Excuse me." The officiant stopped, confused. Avery turned. "Dad?" Richard's face was sorrowful perfection. "I am sorry," he said loudly. "I cannot let this proceed while a crime is being ignored." My body went cold. Daniel stood slowly beside me. Richard looked toward the two officers at the back. "Officers, please." They moved forward. Guests murmured. Jonah stepped closer to Avery. The photographer lowered her camera, then raised it again as if instinct knew history was happening. Richard pointed at me. "That's her. Arrest my ex-wife before she ruins another family milestone." Avery said, "What are you doing?" Richard did not look at her. He looked at the room. The sapphire comb belonging to my mother was stolen years ago during our divorce. This morning it was found in Claire's purse. My ears rang. One officer approached me. "Mom, we need to speak with you." Richard continued. "I tried to handle it quietly for Avery's sake, but Claire has a history of taking what belongs to this family and making herself the victim." There it was, the old script. Updated for a wedding. The officer reached for my purse. Daniel's voice cut through the chapel. "Do not touch her property without consent, a warrant or probable cause that does not originate from a staged family accusation." The officer stopped. "Chief Mercer," Richard smiled. "I expected this. Her husband will try to interfere." Daniel did not move toward Richard. He did not raise his voice. He looked at the officer. "Lang, who reported the alleged stolen property?" Officer Lang looked deeply uncomfortable. "Mr. Bennett, sir?" "When?" "This morning." "Where was it found?" Lang hesitated. "In Mrs. Mercer's purse, according to his statement." "According to his statement?" the second officer said. "He showed us a photo." Daniel looked at me. "Claire, did anyone have access to your purse?" "Not since I arrived, but Richard asked Avery about it 2 weeks ago." Richard scoffed. "This is absurd." Then Avery spoke. Her voice shook, but it carried. "Open the envelope, Mom." Every eye turned to her. Richard's face changed, just slightly. "Enough." I reached into my purse slowly and took out the sealed cream envelope. My hands trembled as I broke the flap. Inside were 4 things: copies of pages from the green notebook, printed emails between Richard and his old attorney, a photo of the sapphire comb in a velvet box on Richard's desk, timestamped 3 weeks earlier, and a folded note from Avery. "Mom, if he tries to accuse you today, please don't protect me by staying quiet. I found proof that he has had the comb for years. He asked the venue coordinator whether your purse would be unattended. I also found a draft police statement on his laptop saying the comb would be discovered in your bag. I gave copies to Jonah and Daniel's assistant yesterday because I was scared I might freeze. I love you. I'm sorry it took me so long to see, Avery." I looked up. My daughter was crying openly now. Richard's voice sharpened. "Avery, what did you do?" Jonah stepped in front of her. "No, what did you do?" Daniel took the documents from me only after I nodded. He scanned them quickly. His face hardened in a way I rarely saw. Then he looked at Officer Lang. "Did you personally see the alleged stolen item inside Mrs. Mercer's purse?" "No, sir." "Did you recover it?" "No." "Did you have a warrant?" "No, sir. We were responding to a theft complaint and possible recovery." "Where is the comb now?" Officer Lang looked at Richard. Richard reached into his jacket. Daniel said, "Stop." Everyone froze. Richard smiled thinly. "I was going to present the evidence." "No," Daniel said. "You were going to plant it." Richard laughed. "You cannot possibly." Then Jonah's best man stepped forward from the second row. His name was Eli. He worked in cybersecurity and had been quietly holding his phone. "Avery asked me to monitor the bridal suite camera feed after she got nervous," he said. "The venue has interior security. I think everyone should see this." The planner looked terrified. Daniel said, "Do not play anything publicly yet." That was the difference between revenge and law. I wanted the room to see. Daniel wanted the case to survive. He turned to the officers. "Secure Mr. Bennett. Not in cuffs yet. Hands visible." Richard's face reddened. "You have no authority here." "This is not your department," Daniel said calmly. "Correct. Which is why I'm asking Officer Lang to contact his supervisor and requesting that the county sheriff respond. I am also a witness to an apparent attempted false report and evidence tampering. Keep your hands where I can see them. Richard looked at Lang. Are you going to let him do this? Lang's eyes moved between Daniel, Avery, me, and the chapel full of guests. Then he said, Mr. Bennett, please remove your hand from your jacket slowly. Richard hesitated. That hesitation ruined him, because a small blue velvet pouch slipped from inside his jacket and fell onto the stone floor. The chapel became very quiet. Not dramatic silence, worse. A silence full of people understanding at different speeds. The pouch opened slightly. A flash of blue stones appeared, the sapphire comb. Avery made a sound like a saw breaking in half. Richard bent to grab it. Daniel moved first. He caught Richard's wrist, turned him with controlled precision, and pinned his hand behind his back. Richard Bennett, he said, voice low and clear, you are being detained on suspicion of filing a false police report, attempted evidence tampering, and attempted unlawful interference with a ceremony through criminal accusation. Officer Lang stepped in then, finally doing his job. Daniel looked at him. Cuff him. Lang hesitated for half a second, then he placed the handcuffs on Richard. Richard stared at Daniel. You planned this, Daniel said. No, your daughter feared you enough to prepare for it. That hit harder than the cuffs. Richard looked at Avery. For the first time all day, his performance slipped completely. You ungrateful little. Stop, I said. One word, not loud. But mine. Richard turned on me. You poisoned her. No, Avery said. She stepped forward, still holding Jonah's hand. She read what you wrote. Richard's face twisted. The sheriff arrived 17 minutes later. 17 minutes in a chapel feels like a lifetime when the father of the bride is sitting handcuffed in the side vestibule and the mother of the bride is holding documents that prove her past was not a misunderstanding. Nobody knew what to do. The officiant looked pale. Guests whispered. Jonah's mother brought me water. Avery stood very still, tears drying on her cheeks. I went to her. Sweetheart. She looked at me like she was 8 and 28 at the same time. I'm sorry, she whispered. No, but I believed him. You were a child. I let him do this today. No, you stopped him today. She shook her head. I wanted a normal wedding. I touched her face, then have one. She looked around the chapel. How? I smiled through tears. By marrying the man who held your hand while the truth came out. Jonah started crying then. The sheriff took statements privately. The video from the bridal suite hallway showed Richard entering the side room where my purse had been temporarily placed with other family items before the ceremony. It showed him looking toward the door, removing the blue pouch from his jacket, then leaving quickly when a bridesmaid's voice sounded nearby. He never got the comb into my purse. That was why he still had it. The draft statement on his laptop, provided by Avery through her attorney friend, was worse. It described how stolen heirloom jewelry was located inside Claire Mercer's belongings, past tense. Written before it happened, the old emails showed strategy from years ago, building the mother narrative. Create a documented pattern of emotional instability, avoid direct denial, express concern. If needed, position missing property as part of divorce-related distress. Richard had been preparing versions of me for decades. The sheriff asked Avery if she wanted to postpone. She looked at me, then at Jonah, then at the chapel doors where Richard had been taken out. No, she said. He doesn't get the whole day. So the wedding continued, not perfectly. Better than perfectly, honestly. The processional music started again. This time, Avery walked alone for the first few steps. Then she stopped beside me. Mom? I stared at her. She held out her hand. Walk with me. For a second, I could not move. Daniel touched my back gently. Go. I took my daughter's hand. Together we walked down the aisle Richard had tried to turn into a crime scene. Every step felt like recovering a year. Avery at 6, holding my hand in the grocery store. Avery at 8, writing in the green notebook. Avery at 12, refusing to hug me because she thought loyalty had sides. Avery at 18, letting me take one graduation photo before running to her father's group. Avery now, choosing me in front of everyone. When we reached Jonah, I placed her hand in his. The officiant wiped his eyes before beginning. People laughed softly. The ceremony was not ruined. It was stripped. Of performance, of politeness. Of Richard's control. When Avery and Jonah said their vows, every word felt earned. When they kissed, the chapel erupted into applause that sounded less like celebration and more like release. At the reception, the seating chart had to be adjusted. Richard's chair was removed from the head table. No one said where he was. Everyone knew. The father-daughter dance was cancelled. Avery came to me during the first song. I still want the mother-daughter dance. The DJ looked confused, then found the song. It was an old song I used to play when Avery was little, while making pancakes on Sunday mornings. She remembered. I did not know she remembered. We danced under warm lights while guests watched quietly. Halfway through, Avery whispered, "I found the recipe card too." "What recipe card?" "Blueberry pancakes. In the notebook. You wrote, 'For when you forget how loved you are.'" I laughed and cried at the same time. I was dramatic. "No," she said. "You were waiting." Maybe I was. After the dance, Daniel joined me near the edge of the floor. "You okay?" "No." He nodded. "Proud of you, I didn't do anything. You didn't disappear." That became my victory, not Richard in handcuffs. Not the guests seeing the truth, not even walking Avery down the aisle. My victory was staying visible when every old instinct told me to leave quietly so no one else felt uncomfortable. The legal fallout took months. Richard was charged with filing a false report, attempted evidence tampering, obstruction, and related offenses. Because he had involved officers and attempted to use a public ceremony to execute a false accusation, the matter was taken seriously. His attorney tried to frame it as a family misunderstanding and emotional stress around his daughter's wedding. The draft statement destroyed that argument. So did the video, so did the old emails, so did Avery's testimony. That was the hardest part. She insisted on giving a statement. I told her she did not have to. She said, "He used me as a stage. I get to speak." Her statement was calm, detailed, devastating. She described years of being told I was unstable. Years of Richard discouraging private contact. Years of learning to manage his approval. She described finding the green notebook and realizing that the parent she had been taught to doubt had been the one protecting her from adult bitterness. Richard took a plea before trial. Men like him hate uncertainty more than guilt. He received probation, fines, community service, and a suspended sentence with strict conditions, including no contact with me and limited contact with Avery unless she initiated. His reputation suffered more than his legal record, which is often how consequences work for polished men. He lost business clients. He lost his church board's seat. He lost the easy trust people had given him for years simply because he spoke calmly. Avery struggled after the wedding. People imagine truth sets you free immediately. It does not. Sometimes truth breaks the floor first. She grieved the father she thought she had. Then she grieved the mother she thought she had lost. Then she grieved herself, the little girl caught between versions. We started therapy together. Our first session was awkward. Avery sat on one end of the couch, twisting her ring. I sat on the other, hands folded. The therapist asked what we wanted. Avery said, "I want to know my mom without my dad's voice in my head." I cried before I could stop myself. I said, "I want to answer without trying to defend 20 years in every sentence." That became our work. Slow work, sacred work. We cooked together, badly at first. Avery burned pancakes twice and declared my recipe impossible. Daniel bought extra blueberries and wisely stayed quiet. Jonah joined sometimes and ate everything like a diplomat. Avery and I read the green notebook together over several months. Not all at once. Some pages hurt too much. On one page, 10-year-old Avery had written, "Dad says you didn't come to my recital because you forgot." Under it, my handwriting. I was outside the auditorium. Dad said the time changed and the doors were locked when I arrived. "I am sorry I missed you sing." "I would never choose to miss your voice." Avery sobbed for an hour after that one. "I thought you forgot," she kept saying. "I know. I was so mad. I know." Richard had not stolen only time. He had stolen meanings. That is harder to return. One by one, we corrected them, not perfectly. But honestly, Daniel never pushed Avery to call him anything. He did not try to replace Richard. He showed up the same way he always did. Quiet, respectful, reliable. He fixed Jonah's truck once without mentioning it. He helped Avery install shelves. He kept copies of wedding evidence locked safely but never brought them up unless asked. One evening, Avery told him, "Thank you for not making Mom's pain about being the hero." Daniel looked embarrassed. "I love your mother, that's not heroism." Avery smiled. "It is in our family." That sentence broke something and healed something at the same time. A year after the wedding, Avery and Jonah hosted a small anniversary dinner in their backyard. No speeches, no performances. Just grilled chicken, string slides, and a homemade cake that leaned slightly to the left. Avery handed me a small box after dinner. Inside was the pearl hairpin. "I want you to keep it," she said. "But you wore it at the reception." "I know, but it belongs with you until maybe someday I have a daughter. Then we'll tell her the real story." "The real story?" She nodded. "That her grandmother walked me down the aisle because truth showed up before I did." I held the hairpin against my palm. Pearls are formed from irritation, from something sharp covered slowly until it becomes luminous. That felt right. Richard sent Avery a letter around that same time. She brought it to therapy unopened. "I don't know if I want to read it." The therapist asked, "What are you afraid it will say?" Avery looked at me. "That he's sorry." I understood. Because sorry can be another hook when it comes from someone who uses words as tools. She eventually read it. It was exactly what she feared. Not an apology, a performance. He wrote that he had been overwhelmed by the emotions of giving away his daughter, that Daniel had escalated things, that I had always been skilled at making him look cruel, that he hoped one day Avery would understand the complexity of adult relationships. Avery folded the letter carefully, then she said, "He still thinks I'm 8. She did not respond. That was growth. A few months later, Richard moved to another city. Not far enough to become legend, but far enough that we stopped seeing his car around town. People still occasionally told me they were shocked by what happened. I learned to say, I was too. Not because I was shocked he tried, because I was shocked he failed in public. Private failure had been his gift for years. Public truth was mine. The strange part is, after everything, I do not hate Richard the way people expect. Hate takes more attention than I am willing to give him. What I feel is clarity. He was a man who needed control so badly that his daughter's wedding became acceptable collateral. He would rather handcuff the mother of the bride than share a day he could not narrate. That is not love. That is ownership wearing a boutonniere. Avery knows that now. I wish she had never needed to. Sometimes viewers ask in the stories like this, why didn't she speak up earlier? I understand the question. I used to ask it of myself. Why didn't I fight harder? Why didn't I show Avery every document? Why didn't I expose Richard when she was young? Here is the truth. When a child is standing between two parents, truth can feel like another weapon if it is delivered without care. I was so afraid of making her carry adult ugliness that I let Richard decorate the silence. I regret that, but regret and self-blame are not the same thing. I did the best I could with the strength I had and the system I was inside. Then, when the moment came, I did better. That is all any of us can do. If you have ever been lied about by someone everyone believed, you know the loneliness of waiting for proof. You know what it feels like to watch people comfort the person hurting you, because they perform pain more beautifully. You know how tempting it is to disappear just to stop being discussed. But listen to me. Do not disappear. Keep the notebook. Save the message. Write the date. Trust the person who asks whether you want advice or witness. And when the room finally turns toward you with the old accusation, stand still long enough for the truth to find its microphone. At my daughter's wedding, my ex-husband tried to make me leave in handcuffs. Instead, I walked her down the aisle. And that is the part I choose to remember. Not his finger pointing, not the officers stepping forward, not the sapphire comb hitting the floor. My daughter's hand reaching for mine, because in the end, the most powerful revenge was not watching Richard get cuffed. It was realizing he no longer held the key to our story.